And welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast, and here on the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel. Here in the Auburn Arena parking lot, Jordan Hare behind us after a huge win for Auburn on Saturday, and it couldn't have come at a better time in terms of recruiting. Probably your biggest weekend of the year, I would say, in terms of recruiting, visit-wise. Definitely is timing-wise, because signing day is December 4th, and this is your last home game to get guys on campus. So a huge opportunity for them, and it worked out quite well. Jason, the first bit of news that we'll touch on real quick, Malik Autrey, the 5-star defensive lineman ranked as a 5-star with 24/7 Sports, shut down his recruitment, not going to visit Ohio State this weekend as he originally planned. Florida was involved, went to go see USC, went to go see UCF as well on official visits over the summer, but he's sticking close to home. Something we always kind of figured would happen, to be honest. The Opelika product shuts it down, which is good news for Auburn. And people may say, well, he's been committed, so does this really mean anything? Not necessarily, but it helps give you a little publicity boost.
It does.
People will see that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you start thinking about having a guy like that that's a big-time player. I mean, it's obviously a guy that has been, he was the first guy committed in this class. People have continued to come after him. You're talking about Florida and Ohio State, people like that. And for him to go, hey, I'm done. I mean, it's a big deal when you're thinking about him working on other guys when you're recruiting for Auburn, but you're still taking visits to guys and go, hey, what's he still looking for? Well, he just answered that question, and I think I think it's a big deal for Auburn, and you're right, just to kind of cement things for one of the top players in your class.
Now it might be getting time for him to put out another one of those fat bat signals, as he's kind of been known for in the class, putting out the fat Batman, as in a guy's going to be committing soon, obviously going into signing day. Don't know what will happen over the next couple weeks. Do expect some signing day fireworks. A guy we're keeping a really close eye on, and have been keeping a close eye on, dating back to well before this time last year, Malik Autrey, 5-star cornerback, been committed to Ohio State since February, been to Auburn for 4 games this year, been to a practice or 2 as well, so he's been on campus a bunch this fall alone, been way more than that over the past couple of years. Obviously committed to Ohio State. Oregon is really in the mix. They're a dark horse here that I would not count out, but we've said for 6 weeks, 8 weeks now, we think Auburn is setting up to be the team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, I think Auburn has put themselves in a great position when you start looking at, kind of what they've done on the field, playing all these freshmen, the future of the program, this class you're bringing in, and with all these defensive linemen. You think about his teammate Jordan Crawford's committed, Malik Autrey, and you think about, Antonio Coleman. You think about on and on and on, the job they've done of adding to this talented freshman group. You got Keldrick Falk, that's a sophomore. You start putting the pieces together on defense, and if you're Malik Autrey, you look and go, man, that thing has a chance to be pretty special. And so, really good relationship with Coach Chrom, really good relationship with Charles Kelly, a great relationship with Hugh Freeze. I mean, he has made him one of his priority guys. I think that's a big deal. And so, I think Auburn has given themselves a great shot to get one of the top players in the country in Malik Autrey.
Yeah, we've touched on it a bunch. Look, the prioritization of the state of Alabama, and they've done so well getting those guys in the top 10 of the state committed, plus some other guys like Alvin Henderson, who's just outside the top 10. 2 guys in the top 10 they don't have. Malik Autrey, who's number 1, and Zion Grady, who's somewhere in like the 7 to 10 range, and they really haven't pushed too hard for Zion Grady since the summer, to be honest. But point being, Malik Autrey, the number 1 player in the state of Alabama, 5-star. If you're truly going to win the state of Alabama, you got to keep the number 1 player in the state of Alabama home.
I mean, I think you have won it without question.
Well,
but it can be an overwhelming squash if you were to get Malik Autrey. And when you look at it, and what it would do for the entire class, not just at home, but just the entire 2025 class would be monumental too. So you start talking about it, going, big deal. A guy that you want, a guy that you push for, to be able to keep that guy at home to cement this in-state class would be a massive deal for Hugh Freeze and his staff.
Before we keep going, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Totally free, doesn't cost you anything. And look, had a ton of player interviews up today, a lot of good content with those guys. The DeMarcus Riddick interview is going to get a lot of views, I would have to imagine. But anyways, for everyone else listening, appreciate you tuning in as well. Jason, we'll stick with 5 stars. Justice Terry, the defensive lineman from Manchester, visited Auburn for the first time since October last year for the Ole Miss game. Everything, by all accounts we've heard, is, look, went as good as possible, put our best foot forward, feel like we have a chance. That's been kind of the consistent theme from talking to different people at Auburn and around this recruitment. For me, it's almost KJ Bolden until it's not. As in, I think the in-state kid is going to stick with Georgia or commit to Georgia in this case until he's not. It's even less than that for me because KJ visited a fair amount of times. Yeah. Justice, this is his first time in over a year, but Auburn is giving themselves a fighter's chance, which is all you can do going into signing day, and they're trying to make a swing and trying to get a splash. Yeah,
this is when if you get it, this is absolutely icing on top of a very big cake. If you were to get a guy like Justice Terry, you take a shot, you swing for the fences, see what happens. And Auburn had a chance to get him in for an official visit. You show him what you got, show him the opportunity, all those things, and see what happens. Yeah, I agree. I would be really surprised if it's not Georgia. But again, you put yourselves in the hunt, see what happens, and you never know. You go to Tuscaloosa and win. You say, hey, look, we told you, we're coming. Then it might have more of an impact. But I do think Auburn, like I said, you make a run, and he's a guy that we've been hearing was going to visit for a while. He finally does visit, and he visits as good a night as you could have. And so if you're Auburn, you put your best foot forward.
And it was not, by all accounts, from what we've heard, Justice didn't interview after his visit, but by all accounts, it wasn't a, please come visit, please come check us out. It was, hey, I want to go. I want to go see Auburn. I want to go check this out again. So that's noteworthy. Maybe a more realistic defensive line target that I think we both think Auburn has a really good chance to flip going into signing day. Darion Smith, the St. Francis product, teammates obviously with Bryce Diaz, Blake Woodby, Wayne Henry in the 2026 class. Funny, we were talking about it yesterday after interviewing him and finally getting a chance to talk with him. Very nice kid, very soft-spoken. Bryce, Blake, and Wayne, they're very nice, not as soft-spoken. They are very loud and energetic. After the game, Blake Woodby literally couldn't talk because he had lost his voice from screaming the whole time. But very, very opposite personalities. But this is a guy that Auburn wants badly, and we think Auburn has a good chance to get him.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit when you look at him of a guy like Malik Autrey, where you go, he's a guy that's not already 300 pounds, a guy that looks like he's probably 275 or 280 or so, but you see a guy that has potential to add some strength is going to be a guy that probably plays maybe strong side in, slides inside to attack, will be a 3 technique, and to do some of those things. So I think an interesting player. And you look, we've seen it. We saw it with Texas A&M, and Auburn was able to beat them, even though they had a bunch of big-time defensive linemen up there. But you look around it, that is one of the premier positions is interior defensive line. It's one of the holes for this Auburn team. And as many of those guys as you can get that you feel like have a chance to play, you better go get them. And this is another one of those guys.
Well, and he would be a really fun pairing with what you have right now as well. Obviously, we touched on Malik Autrey. Big, 6'5", pushing 6'6", should be probably around 320 to 330 by the time he's playing at Auburn. Jordan Crawford, huge, just brick up front, who can move around a lot.
That's the term. Brick is the term. That's what he's built like.
Antonio Coleman, somewhat similar build to Darion Smith, to be honest.
Yeah, a guy that probably plays at 285, but is really quick, great hands, a guy that can penetrate. Dontavius Russell has been my go-to kind of comparison. And you think about Dontavius Russell playing, he was such a solid guy in the right place at the right time. That's what I think about from Antonio Coleman.
Yeah, and then you've got Nate Marshall on the outside, Jared Smith on the outside.
Longer bodies.
Yeah, it's a really fun mix. If you're an Auburn fan, you should be very excited about that, assuming things go well with guys like Nate Marshall and Jared Smith trying to hold on to them as well. Jason, Usman Chrom, huge visit, and by all accounts, it was not just I'm going to go see a good game. It was, I want to get around the Auburn staff again. I want to see if that love and that connection is still there. I want to see what Auburn is like one final time before signing day. And then now it's time to sit down with my family and decide between, am I sticking with my Georgia commitment or am I flipping to Auburn?
Yeah.
And I wish I had more of an answer for everyone that's listening and watching right now. Put him on my big board at 50-50. I think that's about fair.
Yeah.
Maybe favor Auburn a little bit, but again, it's an in-state guy that Georgia already has committed. Those are real tough. But Jason, Auburn's running game has been fantastic this year, and Georgia is actually having kind of a down year. Not that 1 year changes everything, because there's history to everything as well, but it's worth noting, of course.
It is, and a school not too far away from Auburn. It's not like he's on the other side of the state of Georgia. It's not too far away, and so you start thinking about that. And you look, and we've heard, you look at Auburn and you go, the size of the running backs, Alvin Henderson adding to that group as a commitment. Look, the one thing they don't have is a bigger body, a little bit more physical guy, and the term we've heard is hammer. They don't have a hammer. They're looking for a hammer to go along in this running game. Usman Chrom is that guy now. He is athletic. He can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah.
He has great hands, so he does a lot of different things, but it's a different body than Auburn's had in a couple of years at running back. I think that's a big deal, and I think because of that, you look and go, look, we don't have anybody like you. It's kind of the same thing for Jared Smith, going, look, we don't have anybody like you on the roster. I think you have the same argument for a guy like Usman Chrom, and I think that helps Auburn's chances.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Honestly, quick shout out to Usman. Everyone that we've dealt with throughout this process has been great, but Usman is one of our favorites. Great kid,
Yep.
Always talks with us. I don't care if he goes to Georgia, I don't care if he goes to Auburn, I don't care if he goes to North Florida.
Wherever.
Root for him
Correct.
all the way.
Absolutely.
Great kid. Jason, moving down to 2026, unless there's anyone that I'm missing. I mean, the commits were all in terms of a lot of them were in. Deuce Knight, actually, let's touch on Deuce, because Deuce did do an interview after the game.
Yeah.
He said at the time that he's not planning to visit Ole Miss for the Egg Bowl. He said, "No, sir, I'm not." That was his quote. Now we'll see what happens over the course of the week. Ole Miss will obviously keep pushing to try and get him in for a visit, but man, does a win like that, look, we said a loss won't kill you, but a win will help you.
Yep, there we are.
Feel like that one helped a lot.
And I think as much as anything for Deuce, showing up the last 2 weeks, being playoff games and doing those things, traveling and coming to Auburn, as much as anything, the effort to come and be a part of it, as much as anything, that tells you a story for me.
And it's not a long drive, but coming from someone that drove to see one of his games and got back at like 2 a.m. on Friday night.
It's a haul.
It's not a short drive either. It's 3 hours and 45 minutes. That's not easy, especially after playing a playoff game on a Friday night. And then, like we've talked about, the ULM game, a morning game.
Yes.
So that was very noteworthy. Got almost all of their commits in. The only interesting one was Nate Marshall, who went to go and visit Texas. So that's one, ears perk up a little bit and worth monitoring. And also Elijah Melendez. He visited. He was not expected in, so that was good. His interview after was not super encouraging, though, but at the same time, we have not talked with Elijah a lot, so we don't know his personality quite as well as a guy like Usman. So we'll see what happens there. Jared Smith was back in for people asking questions about him. We did not get a chance to talk with him, never even saw him. Saw him storming the field instantly.
Yeah.
From there, lost in the shuffle.
Everybody was going after that. Yeah.
So.
I think our lesson that we've learned in the last couple of weeks, and we knew that was coming, was that there's going to be a handful of guys that are still going to be heavily recruited by other teams.
That's what happens when you have good guys.
That leave the door open. That's right. And so you're going to have to fight. And on the flip side of that, Auburn is fighting for a guy like Malik Autrey. They're fighting for guys that are committed elsewhere as well. So it's on both sides. You might lose a guy here, but you may add a guy here. That is part of the world we live in now, and it's never been more apparent than it is in this day and age with NIL, with transfer portal, all those things. You're going to have to fight, and it's going to be a battle till Wednesday. For heck, there may be 10 or 12 of these guys that you go, hey, let's make sure we get there to the finish line.
Another one, TJ Dice. Should have mentioned him as well. He was back on campus, back for a multi-day visit over the weekend, fresh off his visit to Florida. Had a lot of really good things to say. I asked him, what has the Auburn staff kind of told you after you visited Florida? What have they been preaching to you? And he said, look, they don't have to preach anything. They're not worried about Florida. We've had this bond. And he said, I've been to this university like 15 times. I've been here so much. He said, I've seen faces back to back to back to back. I've seen you guys back to back to back to back. And then I pressed him even a little bit more. I said, should Auburn fans be worried about Florida? And he said, no, I don't really think they should. Now, that doesn't mean he's guaranteed to sign on December 4th. Florida's not going to read that and say, oh, we're done, we're moving on.
Correct.
But like we said, helps a lot. Jason, moving down to 2026, touch on a couple guys here. Tank Jones, the 5-star from St. Paul's, he was back in. Bryce Perry-Wright, the 4-star defensive lineman from Buford, fringe 5-star kind of guy, he was back in. Jaira Edwards, the St. Francis safety, he was in with those guys. There were a ton more 2026s, but those are the three I want to touch on real quick.
Yeah.
Tank Jones, obviously a huge one. Get him back in as much as you can. He's already been here a bunch.
Yeah, no, obviously getting guys in on campus is big, and obviously that's one of the guys that has been a target for a long time on this board. And so you think about, edge rusher. You think about having a hammer in that position on defense, that's what Tank is. He is a hammer as an edge rusher and as one of those guys on the outside. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the guys, because of the guys you already have committed in this class, in that 26 group. Those guys were here this past weekend. That linebacker group, add to what you've got on the field right now, well, it would be really, really special to keep that group together and add a Tank Jones to it.
Yeah, and then you want to talk about adding on the interior. We just touched on the 2025. 2026 won't find too many targets higher on the board than Bryce Perry-Wright. Been here a bunch. He said this is the best Auburn visit he's been on. Said that might have helped Auburn a little bit as well, and he said that he's planning to have a decision soon. Now we asked him, is soon a couple days, is soon a couple weeks, is soon in the next month or two? He said, we'll just have to wait and see. But we feel like Auburn is squarely in the mix here. I think Auburn is firmly in that top 2 to top 3 range. I don't know who else is up there, but I feel like Auburn is right up there.
Yeah, and this is a guy that's elite. I mean, you look at him, and this is an Aaron Donald type player. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to be Aaron Donald because there's only been one of those guys. But you look at him, and it's that short, stout, explosive, off the ball. I think a guy that's a 6'2", 285-pound interior guy that is havoc wreaking. And those are the types of guys that Auburn hasn't had. And you start thinking about the future of this sport and what you have to have. You got to have guys that create havoc, and Bryce Perry-Wright's one of those guys.
Yeah. Who was the other 2026? There were so many guys. There were 3 that I just listed.
You mentioned the safety, Jair. Yeah.
Jair Edwards, yes. Down with the St. Francis crew. His first visit, he's been trying to get on campus several times. Visit plans fell through. Finally got in. Look, those St. Francis guys, they love Auburn. Jair Edwards connected with DJ Durkin, of course, but Charles Kelly is really his guy. Had glowing reviews about Auburn. He said, look, this is for sure an official visit spot for me once that time comes around. And then I asked him, I said, look, where does Auburn kind of stack up? Are they a real contender in your recruitment right now? And he paused for a minute, and I thought he was going to say, we'll see. I'm still not there yet. This is my first visit. He goes, they're top 3.
Yeah.
Which is noteworthy. Now there's light years to
Long
go
way
in
to
that
go,
recruitment, but that was, he said Wayne Henry is his best friend, really close with Blake and Bryce and all those guys. So
yeah, I think a couple of guys too, a couple of in-state guys that I think could be guys that definitely keep an eye on that were on campus Saturday. Landon Duckworth, quarterback from Jackson, is a guy that I think has a chance to continue to rise, and big athletic guy would be, from an offensive standpoint, what you'd have with Walker White and what you'd have with Deuce Knight would be a similar skill set to what you would bring in if you were to grab a guy like Landon Duckworth. So I think that's got to watch. And then Jaquez Wilkes, big time. He plays running back at Wilder. He plays everything for the little 1A school. He would be an outside edge rusher.
Yeah, he
big
said they're
body
recruiting him
guy.
at both. They said linebacker and edge.
And so you look, and so there's a couple of 26 guys to kind of at least keep on the radar. And there's a couple of guys that could be playing for a state championship here next week if they win this Friday.
Yeah, and I mean that doesn't even Caden Prothro, the 5-star tight end from Bowden. There were so many names, and we can't touch on all of them. Want to touch on the main ones with signing day a little over a week away. Recording this on Monday, but y'all will see this on Tuesday. Jason, in terms of the future schedule for us, this Friday we'll be out on the road at Pike Road. Sarah Lamb plays at Pike Road, so get a chance to watch Antonio Coleman play pretty close to home. Haven't seen him yet, so that'll be fun. Then next week, of course, will be signing day. I think we'll probably stick with our usual schedule, at least what we did last year. Probably do a live show Monday night, probably do a live show Tuesday night. Wednesday, it'll be a little chaotic because of Super 7, but we're going to get some content to y'all. Some video content because, of course, AuburnUndercover.com will have content.
Yeah, you're right. Wednesday signing day is signing day morning. You'll have 7A state championship game that night in Birmingham, and it's also the night of the Auburn-Duke game in Durham. So Nathan will be in Durham. Me and Christian will go from Auburn to Birmingham with signing stuff all day long, and then we'll have a football game that night. So yeah, there'll be lots of things going on that day for sure.
Yeah, it'll be chaotic. I think our rough plan is to try and, as soon as we get done with Hugh Freeze's press conference, whenever that is on Wednesday, to try and do a live show real quick, probably from the complex, just right there. See if we can get a couple guests, some Auburn coaches or something like that on the show. We'll see what happens. Obviously, just keep paying attention next week. We'll have more details on that for you. But we'll definitely see you guys on Monday next week for a recruiting show. Probably just do it live.
Yeah.
Same with Tuesday as well. And then, of course, throughout this next week, Nathan and Jason have you guys locked in with Iron Bowl coverage, Maui coverage, all that kind of stuff.
Got a whole lot coming.
Yeah, all at AuburnUndercover.com. Believe there's some Black Friday deals coming up as well. So if you're not a VIP subscriber, and if you go over to the site, stay tuned for that. I think it's 60% off, and then I think we'll do our best deal of the year at 75% off. So definitely pay attention for that if you're not a sub. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. For Jason Caldwell, Christian Clemente, we'll catch you guys on the next one.